Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to this session. My name is Nigel Poole. I'm the founder and CEO here at Matter Design and Digital. We are a BigCommerce specialized agency based in Sydney, and we are very excited to be part of this event. It's the third e-commerce 360 we've done, and we're really excited about the topic for this one, and really excited to be tuning into some of the other sessions that are going on. When thinking about what topic we were going to talk about, we wanted to choose a topic that can make a big difference to your bottom line. This is a topic that's not an optimization strategy, it's a core strategy to the way you would re-platform your e-commerce site. And it's a topic that's very spoken about a lot right now, and I think it's one that we would like to address and share our views and our experience on. So we're going to talk about what problem Headless solves. We're going to talk about that and why you would actually do a headless architecture. We're going to talk about what exactly Headless is from a system design point of view. And we're going to talk about how you would go about implementing a headless architecture onto your e-commerce site. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the problem, and we're going to talk through with slides to go through some of these topics. So let's start with the problem. Unbounced quotes that 70% of consumers admit that page speed impacts their willingness to buy from an online retailer. And this data from Google shows that as the page speed increases, so does the probability of the user to bounce off that website. That is, that they leave the website on the first page that they view. And this data here from Business Insider shows how the conversion rates and the time for a page to load correlate to prove that point. So as the page speed increases, so when the page speed is very fast, the conversion rate increases. And conversely, we can see that slow speed equals fewer conversions. Secondly, we can see that Google is going to change their algorithm from mid-June. It's actually going to be in place by the end of this month, where they'll be using metrics that measure the page speed, the page experience for the user as part of the way that they rank websites on their search result pages. These are called Core Web Vitals, and it includes 3 new metrics. So the largest contentful paint, the time it takes to load the largest part of the page, that is. The first input delay, so that's the time that it becomes interactive, and the visual stability of the site, so also called cumulative layout shift, and that's how stable the layout of the website is. So slow sites will shift around as they load because the content loads in slow, which detracts from the user experience. So Google takes the user experience very seriously. They're in the business of presenting quality options to people using their search engine. And so they want to put forward the best options to the user so that they can get the best experience from their search page. So this is a really important piece for e-commerce sites right now, that the website actually performs well on these metrics so that they can maintain or increase their Google search result. If your site is slow, you'll be getting a lower search result page rank. So this is a from a technical point of view on your website, it's really important that your website is set up to give yourself the best chance to rank high on Google. And this should coincide with an SEO strategy so that you can gain more traffic from organic search results. So what we can see is that fast speeds equal higher conversions, and fast page speeds also will equal a higher search engine results page rank, which will in turn equal more traffic. So if we think about the primary calculation of revenue for an e-commerce site, which is your traffic times the conversion rate times the average order value, what we're looking at here is two of the key metrics in this equation. So we're looking at increasing your conversion rate through a better page speed. So a website that results in fewer bounces or a lower percentage of bounces. And we're also looking at an increase in traffic because your website will meet the Google requirements to rank high on Google search result pages. And if we can get both these strategies right, then we can get a cumulative effect on revenue, assuming your average order value stays the same. And this is a key driver for what we'd consider a $1 million move in the context of this event. But these metrics are really important to the success of your e-commerce site. So what we want to talk about is whether headless is the solution for this problem. But let's start with what is headless. It's a term that gets used a lot in e-commerce and website technology in general. What we talk about when we talk about headless is what we'd call a composable headless architecture. This is different to what is traditionally called a monolithic architecture, and this is where the front end of the website is tied tightly to the content management system running that website. And that might be supplemented with third-party plugins. And so what you get is a website and an admin that is tightly coupled. In contrast, what we are looking at is what's called a MAC architecture. So MAC stands for Microservices, API First, Cloud Native, and Headless. And this is where your front-end presentation layer is decoupled from the systems in the back end running the site. These front ends can be driven through a composable headless architecture, and this is where we are composing the pages based on connections to those microservices. And what that means is we can then build a front end and multiple front ends that are going to be built specifically for the use cases that your customers need. And they can be built off a unified backend system that is running the operations of your digital commerce stack. So the advantages of this setup are firstly, you can achieve better performance. This is because the pages are served through a content delivery network, which improves the page load speed. And this is done because what we are essentially serving when someone loads the page is a static page. And because that page is what's called static, which is where the site is essentially an HTML file with content and styling all built into it, it means that that can be distributed across a content delivery network, which means that that content is closer to the user across the internet. We also get higher security because we've separated the front end from server-side processes that are running within the microservices. We can achieve simple and cheap scaling. So if you have a lot more traffic, that can be handled through a content delivery network with very minimal cost and without any real impact on the back-end components running the site. We also get development control, so we have the flexibility to add and remove services without impacting the front end. We get data control because we are drawing data from multiple sources of truth through your backend system, which is reducing replication of data through that system. And we also get strategic advantages. So we can support multiple front ends from a single backend system. So we can support multi-site or device-specific front ends or in-store kiosks or whatever the case might be. And they can run as their own headless front end off a single back end. So I've talked a little bit about static sites and how Google is ranking sites and how that changes over time. So what I thought I'd do is just do a brief overview of the history of website technology. So we'll start with where websites started, where developers would code HTML sites, static HTML sites, which are basically a series of files all linked together. And that's where, and all the content that you would see on a page was saved in the HTML file in that case. Back when this was the latest technology, these were still quite slow to load on a dial-up modem, but if you ran the same type of site now on broadband, you would see them load extremely fast. And that's because they're so simple in terms of the what needs to load into the browser. They're a very simple technology that's actually composing into the browser to show that page. Next, websites moved to be what was called dynamic. So this is where the front end was linked into a database, and the data would be saved in a database and pulled into that front end page. So this was very useful because content could be centrally managed in a database. You could save templates, which would then render multiple pages which would have different content, but working off one template. And this saw content management systems become really useful to manage sites. So think WordPress would save the data into the WordPress database, and you would use a WordPress admin to control that data. And that would, when a WordPress page would load, it would pull the data out of the database and show that on the page. So this is a big improvement in terms of how the content could be managed a lot more effectively than managing it within the HTML files itself. We then moved to a different type of dynamic website where it was powered by data sourced in from APIs, which is still a very common type of website. And this enables, this has a lot of advantages. We can get live data out of systems rendered straight into the front end page. And so we can get some very good user experiences as a result. And this structure has seen websites get more and more complex in terms of the number of systems that are built into the back end and running the website. And so this has seen more and more functionality built into websites, more services built so that users can get more information through a website, and it's really accelerated the way that websites provide a service to the end user. And we still see this, we still build with this technology. It's very common these days and a very useful architecture. But what's happened recently is what's called a going back to the simplicity of a static HTML front-end page, but done by being generated by data sourced from these via API from these back-end sources. So this is I guess, an evolution of the dynamic site, which is powered by data source from APIs. But it's what happens is the site gets composed or built in a process so that essentially the process of loading a page is done before in a process, and it composes an output which is a static HTML page. So you end up with a more static site which is very fast and simple for the browser to load. But it's driven by all those back-end services where you can get data and very accurate live data coming through. A static HTML site doesn't mean that there's no live data. We can still load in live information. We do this for things like live inventory, so we can make sure we're putting products on the page that are available. But what it means is those static HTML files can be distributed through CDNs, which results in a very fast page load. It almost feels like an app the way when you browse these sites, because it loads so fast, because it feels like the data is already there in the browser. And so what's happened with this, if you look at this history, it's almost gone full circle back to those back to that static HTML structure, which is very fast to load. And if you think about what Google is doing by the way it ranks sites, is it's rewarding those sites that load fast. So Google isn't saying front-end technology should be complex. It's saying it should be fast. And so what we want to do is create fast sites that still have the full functionality and the complex architecture behind it that runs creates a very sort of feature-rich user experience. But we want the output to be very simple, so that it's easy to load on all devices. So if you're plugged into your computer, it's going to load super fast. But if you're in a patchy area on your phone, then we still get very simple pages with light content, light file size loading in, which means you're still going to get a good experience on that website. So what we're trying to do here, and what we are doing, is getting the best of both worlds. We're getting the fast performance, but we're still maintaining the ability to have all those services through the website. So I talked a bit about page speed and how that's measured by Google. So Google Page Speed Insights is the standard for measurement of a website's page load performance, also known as Lighthouse. And if we look at this example here, it's scoring 100. 100 out of 100, can't get any better than that. This site is a site for Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company. And this site is scoring 100. And the reason why is because it's a very basic static site. It's actually a site that is reminiscent of early sites from the late 90s, and this is what it looks like. So not the most attractive UI by any means, but from a performance point of view, and from the way, and Google doesn't really care about how it looks, it cares about how it loads and what the user experience is. So Google's going to rank a site that loads fast very high. So we don't want to achieve this sort of UI. We still want to achieve very beautifully designed e-commerce sites, but we do want to achieve the high scores that we can get from a static site. So Berkshire Hathaway is just keeping it really simple and sort of going back to the early technologies of websites and HTML static sites. But what we're doing these days is building static HTML sites that are generated via API with all the microservices in the background. We are doing this with what's called a JAMstack. JAMstack is an acronym. JAMM stands for JavaScript, APIs, and Markup. These are the three core components that can make up a website built with this architecture. And a static site generator is, we use one called Gatsby. This is a technology that draws all the information in from the different microservices via those APIs, and with a front end built with a JavaScript technology. In our case, we build with React, and it then generates HTML markup, which is then delivered through the browser. We host with a solution called Netlify, which is purpose built for static site generated sites. And this architecture, it's a well-known architecture in the development community. It produces very fast performing sites, and we've invested a lot of time and resources into developing a JAMstack architecture to build e-commerce sites. I mentioned before MAC. MAC stands for Microservices API First, Cloud Native, SaaS, and Headless. The MAC Alliance is a group of technologies that are aligned with this type of site. BigCommerce is part of this alliance. There's a number of technologies that are really work well together. And what MAC Alliance is about is bringing those different technologies together so that there is a community of developers and technologies that can produce this sort of site. And what this does is, this is a quote from their site, a future-proof enterprise technology and propel current and future digital experiences. So this is where it's really like latest technology, latest way of thinking about how to build fast performing digital experiences. So if we think about JAMstack and Mac, what we've got on the left is a more traditional website structure, and the arrows between these services represent the queries and the responses through these systems. And then if we look at the JAMstack on the right, it's a much flatter structure. It means that we are pulling data straight out of microservices. We're hosting it on a CDN. We're serving via the CDN to the customer, and we're getting a very fast performing site as a result. So I mentioned that we've been investing in this area, and we have developed a headless architecture, which we call JAMM, JavaScript, APIs, Markup, and Matter, being the fourth M there, or the second M, but the fourth letter. So this architecture we've built with Gatsby and React and Node.js, and this hooks into common e-commerce applications that are available on the market and technologies that we use frequently. And we've developed this architecture, which is basically a framework that we then build upon to meet specific solutions, to create specific solutions for our clients and their individual needs, and to give them an edge in the e-commerce market, because we can produce faster sites and we can get it performing better with respect to Google's page speed and ranking system. So it's recently launched, and we have a number of projects on this that we're working on at the moment, that we're very excited to be launching in the coming months. And this architecture, I've got a preview here which shows the solutions that we've got built into this architecture so far. And what JAMM is it's a front-end accelerator. So it's a front end with all the e-commerce functionality that you would expect from an e-commerce website, and that's built using React, Gatsby, and Node to connect all the data together. It's hosted on Netlify, which gives us functions to process this sort of website, and it gives us hosting and a CDN to distribute these pages across the internet. And then we have our microservices that we hook into. So these are the ones that we currently have, and we have this system built around BigCommerce, and so we leverage the BigCommerce ecosystem and the technologies that it interfaces with, and it's really the hub of the back-end technologies, but it's supplemented with other microservices that do other things in the system that mean we can then create that full e-commerce experience across the website, but also customer service, reviews, and marketing automation. So this architecture is up and running. We've seen some really good results in terms of performance, and we also have on our roadmap some more technologies that we'll be connecting in with, and we're also open to other technologies. If you are part of a technology and you're interested in talking to us about building in connections to your technology, we're very interested in those conversations. And if you're a retailer that has another system that's already in place and you want to build a headless front end, then we can certainly adapt our architecture to incorporate those systems that you have. We are currently working on one which is hooking into a proprietary in-house system for a retailer, and so the architecture is very extendable like that. And then also on our roadmap is improved user experience. So we're always going to be developing new innovative user experiences into the front end pages. And we're also working on some innovations around how clients can actually manage a headless architecture, and how that admin experience actually takes place, and making some improvements in that area. So we're really excited about this, about JAMM and what that will mean for our clients, and it's something we've invested heavily in to date, and we'll continue to invest in, because we see this being a very exciting area for people that run e-commerce sites, and it's definitely a way that you can get an advantage in many cases. So, but it does beg the question where the headless is for everyone, because we've talked a bit about all the benefits of it, but there's things that you have to be aware of if you're considering headless, and I've listed a few of these. There's more to consider, and every retailer will have their own requirements that needs to be considered in the context of headless versus dynamic site. But one to start with is the build process. So publishing a page to the site isn't what you might be familiar with, where you hit save and you publish that data live immediately. What happens is you publish your content, and the system will build out a website, build out the web pages through what we call a build process. And that can happen with a set frequency. It can happen based on a trigger, such as a save event. It can also happen based on a schedule. So you can schedule a new build to take place at, say, at midnight on the night before you're going to release a new sale, and that would then publish all that new content that you've got ready and prepared to go live for that at that time and date. So it's a little bit different to how a lot of people are used to working with websites, but it does suit teams that are very structured and in the way that they run their e-commerce and their content. And so if you have an experienced e-commerce team and workflows around how you publish information to your website, it can create a lot of control in the way that happens. So it's really something to be weighed up as you're considering what's the right architecture. Next, I've put technical capability. So headless requires an appreciation of the underlying architecture running the site. So it requires the people running the site to understand how the microservices are connected into the site, and what each microservice does, and how that is then generated and published to the site. So it does require some technical skill to understand that. And then thirdly, it does require some support, developer support, whether that's through a trusted agency or if you have in-house development capability. You do want to have that resource available so that you can have a developer's skill set to help manage and maintain the site for you, and really support that site to be the best site it can be. So not everyone would fall into these or fit the mold that you would want for a headless architecture. But for those that do, you can then realize those advantages that I've spoken about. And so I guess it also begs the question whether it's the silver bullet for e-commerce. And I guess I would say in all cases, no. It's not going to be the silver bullet in all cases, but in many cases, it is a way that you can get a faster site that, firstly, if you take a customer first approach where you are trying to deliver the best experience for your customers, and which will result in a better conversion, then a headless architecture enables a really fast performing site, very content rich and highly functional, which are the things that customers expect and demand of websites these days. So you can achieve that with headless. You want to question whether you've got full stakeholder support internally. You do want to have that support of all your stakeholders, and make sure that everyone is aligned and bought into the benefits of headless, and why you're building a site that way. It's not the most common structure at the moment. So it's fairly new, and people are starting to adopt this structure. But you want to have stakeholder support internally so that everyone's bought into how you're going to run that site. You also want to think about weigh up static site versus dynamic site. So if you have content and a site structure where having that fixed between the build processes, then that's a headless architecture is very good. But if your content and data is constantly changing, like by the minute, by the hour, like it's something that may be better suited to a dynamic site. So a site where you might trade off a bit of that high performing that page speed. You might trade off some of that because you want to have that dynamic data and have very live to the second type data where everything's called in live from your backend systems. So that's something to weigh up as well. But please note that you can still have a static site with live dynamic data loading in. So when I say static site, what I mean is that the page structure and the page that actually loads and into the browser is built on static files. But you can still load dynamic data such as inventory and maybe personalization into the front end. That can still happen with a headless site. And then the final point I've put is conversion rates and search traffic. So I guess this is the primary reason you would consider headless. If moving the needle on these metrics will make the difference for your business and make you more money, then headless is definitely something that you want to consider and see if it's the right fit for your business. But speed and conversion rate and traffic volume from Google are primary drivers of revenue, and so this is what makes headless so important to consider. So that's the presentation I've got for you. We are Matter Design and Digital. We've been around since 2003. I founded the business. I own and operate the business. We're a BigCommerce elite partner. We're Agency Partner of the Year for BigCommerce in this region. We're also Search Spring New Partner of the Year, and very specialized in BigCommerce, and we've put a lot of investment into Headless as well, and have experience in this. And if you're interested to talk more on this topic, we'd welcome you to give us a call or write me an email. I'd love to have a chat with you if it's something that you're considering.